All right, let's get this started. Welcome back, viewer, Mr. Wayne. And guess what day it is? It is Wednesday, May 7th. And right now it is 21:53. It's 9:53 p.m. And it's time for part 15 of Master Key System. Now, we had our retreat throughout the week, and I got some things I would like to share with you. We got to spend a lot of time with God. We got to spend a lot of time out in the woods. We went to this place. It was a Bar M Ranch. Beautiful place. Beautiful, beautiful place. And we got to throw axes. We got to pet some animals. We got to look at some animals. Most importantly, we got away from the world and out of our routine. And about a week and a half ago, for whatever reason, I was thinking about property. Now, I came across an opportunity to sell property. I was, like I said before, I was invited to the retreat by a customer of mine in Walmart. And this man paid for it and everything, which is a total blessing within itself. And he buys property, and he has lots of property. And when I was on the retreat, I ended up meeting a man whose name was Jim. A wonderful man, older man. And we were talking about the business of real estate. And it piqued my interest. It definitely intrigued me, as we were talking about all the probabilities involved in real estate and the importance of it. Long story short, I'd really been thinking about where I'm heading with Walmart. The fact that I was able to go on the retreat and get away from everything really got me to look at where I was going from an outside perspective, and at least from a different perspective, because I got out of that. I got away from it. And today was my first day back, and you know what? I wasn't excited to go back to work. I wasn't excited to have to be there again. I wasn't excited about any of it. I'm just keeping it 100%, just being honest about my excitement. And I don't know if I shared this in one of the videos, but there's a statistic. Obviously, the majority of people are not excited or happy about going to work, about what they do. Now, obviously, there's responsibility and duty and honor in doing what you need to do. But this is America, right? We legitimately are blessed beyond measure to live in this country, and we have every opportunity to live and create the life that we desire to live and create. And we have the opportunity to be who we want to be and to do what it is that we want to do. Now, today, I have an old colleague of mine. He got promoted to coach, and he looked exhausted. And he was telling me he's taking 3 months off. Now, when he was a lead in our store, they gave him the opportunity to make a few changes, right? Run things the way that he wants to run them. And he did. He had the highest scores, the highest numbers in all of Washington stores, Walmart stores, by them allowing him to do that. And he was telling me, even when he was a lead in my store, all the gossip from others that couldn't understand how he was hitting his numbers. He was being smart about how he ran his department, the way to run the department. He was smart about the system he put into play. Obviously, he was still abiding by Walmart's system, but he found a very effective way to do it. Now, with where he's at, he's in a different store, different state, and they are not letting him do his ideas. They're not letting him do things. They're not accepting his ideas. They're pushing back. And I was thinking about too, and he was telling me about his schedule because he has kids, he has his wife, he has his place, he has a lot of things he's responsible for. But I was also looking at what he's dealing with work. Ultimately, he was talking about he can't go anywhere else because he already established himself there and it's supporting his family. He's so locked into his routine and where he is in his position that he has to deal with. He has to get through what he's dealing with. Now, I'm not there when it comes to Walmart, but looking at him and thinking about these other opportunities, specifically with real estate, it really was an eye-opener. Like, is this how I want to be living in the future? Is this something that I want to be experiencing or have to go through? And I was thinking, no, heck no. There's absolutely no way I want to be living that way or dealing with things that way. Now, there's no saying he's going to be living like that forever, but still, there are better ways to do things and live our lives. Now, with the position I'm in, obviously, I'm going to look at that, I'm going to observe it, and decide if that's the way I want to live. Now, I don't have kids yet, I'm not married yet, so I have every opportunity still to go out and do something for myself, to build something that will give me the time, the money, and the ability to help others, and obviously a lot more freedom when it comes to the choices that I would like to make. There are opportunities out there that will allow you to do that, and Walmart, I see, is not one of them because they have to answer to their higher-ups. Now, there's nothing wrong with having a higher-up, but lack of freedom is not, it's not a life. Lack of freedom is not a life, right? We as Americans and our founders, our fathers fought. They risked their lives for freedom. You know how important it is to be free, freedom of choice, freedom of thought, freedom to do what you want to do. Because it would be a lot different if he had the freedom to act on his ideas, and he would be much, much more. I'm not saying he's not happy, right? Who am I to say whether he's happy or not? He's doing what he knows he needs to do as a man, as a father, as a husband. For me, that wouldn't make me happy. And even so, I had been pushing and pushing for lead, but I've learned even, like, whether I get lead or not, it's not dependent upon how well I work. It's not dependent upon how good I do. It's dependent upon whether they choose the higher-ups, whether they choose to make me a lead or not. So in the end, I could choose to be a lead because we know lead is ultimately a state of mind. You don't have to be in a position to be a lead. But when it comes to positioning, whether I become lead or not is dependent upon somebody else's choice. And thinking about real estate, back on that, yesterday and the day before, I went to Keller Williams. There's a Keller Williams out here. And I just walked right in, and the lady looked very happy to see me. And she made a statement like, "You just walked in?" Right? Like, that's not just something that happens. Like, yes, I walked in and I would like more information about becoming a real estate agent, at least get involved in real estate. And She went to the back, she got somebody. I met one of the agents that runs the, uh, the location. And Keller Williams is a franchise, so the agents that work under the Keller Williams franchise, we still own our own business, but we're doing it through the franchise of Keller Williams. It would be on a 1099 form. And that excites me. And I met him, I met his wife, and this couple runs the location. And it was amazing. And we were having a conversation. We got to know each other a little bit more. I got all the information I needed to get started. And a lot of the conversation that we are having was everything that I was telling colleagues prior, like integrity. I have a colleague, he's younger than me, but I was talking about integrity because he was having a little bit of a struggle keeping up with the work that we are required to do, because there's a lot of work. We don't just do our work, we do other people's work as well. We go to multiple departments, we cover multiple things, we do a lot more than what we are hired on to do, which that's everywhere, right? It's everywhere. But I was talking about integrity, and I was saying how it's not about the amount you have to do, it's about who it's helping you to become, right? Look at what this is helping you become. You're building character, you're putting more into what you are doing, right? You're meeting the demands of what is required of you to meet. And that's building the mindset, that's building the character, that's building the resilience, the tolerance, the stress tolerance, and dealing with customers, whether they're happy or not, and multitasking and doing everything you know you need to do, not just for your department, but also fulfilling help in another department as well. But me and this lady, this woman, we were talking about integrity, and she was telling me these things, and I was like, wow, like this is awesome, because it showed me that we are vibing on the same frequency, right? Since this program is all about frequency, vibrations, energy, mindset, consciousness, thoughts, emotions, goal seeking, goal oriented, right? This program is all about that. And then the natural laws, such as law of attraction, cause and effect, psychology, right? Our human behavior, how we become that which we are thinking about. And I totally manifested this opportunity, right, with real estate. And I even said that, like, in the middle of our conversation. I told her, I stopped, I looked to the side, and I took a breath in, and I let it out. And I said, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, right? Like this serendipity, all the synchronicities, just things that are aligning. And she mentioned positional leadership and how, retail corporations that whatnot, they have positional leadership, but that doesn't necessarily mean the person in the position is the real leader. And I could vouch for that, and I know a lot of you watching this could also vouch for that, because you see associates doing a lot more than what the leader is doing. Now, for granted, the leader does have his own responsibilities, but we know the highest of all leadership is being in the trenches, doing everything you need to do in that position. Now, obviously, once you start getting to management, that's a whole nother story. Because you're managing, in a place like Walmart, you're managing many, many different departments. You're managing the entire store. You're managing the managers of the store, the managers of the department. But anyway, I was thinking, the amount that I'm putting into Walmart just for the hopes that they decide to make me the lead. Now, throughout the process, it looked promising for a while. But when I look at it now, I feel like there hasn't really been any movement or any involvement with me, with the leaders. And I don't like that. Why would you like that? Thinking about real estate, it's like the amount I'm putting here, like you could put into your own business. You could put it into an opportunity that all the results are based upon you, right? And the fruits of your labor and what you manifest is dependent upon you, and you'll reap greater rewards in connection to that which you are doing, right? In connection to the value that you're bringing to people, to society. Because housing is one of the absolute most important things that we need as a society. And I got the papers that I needed to get started. I got everything I needed to get started. And, I can't get out of my head, even as much as I've tried, I can't get out of my head what Mr. Howie told me. Just don't waste your life at Walmart. And what that lady told me, that I deserve better than Walmart. And we do. We deserve more. And I'm excited about going to meetings and connecting with these people, because they have an entrepreneurial champion mindset. It's not hard to see. And that's what I want to be around. That's what I need to be around, especially to continue to pull out the best of me, the best of us. And viewer, likewise with you got to be around people that are just serious about the things that they are doing. And that's not exactly the easiest thing to find in something like Walmart. Nothing against Walmart. I'm grateful for the opportunity. But I feel like I don't know. This opportunity came to me and I'm going to explore it. I'm going to go ahead and say that. But anyway, we're on part 15. We're very excited for this part. Let's see what Mr. Hannell has in store for us with this. So let's go ahead and let's get started. So introduction, part 15. Experiments with parasites found on plants indicate that even the lowest order of life is enabled to take advantage of natural law. This experiment was made by Jacques Locke, MD, PhD, a member of the Rockefeller Institute. So he's saying this man, Jacques Locke, who was a member of the Rockefeller Institute, did some experiments with parasites that he found on plants. And this is what he says, and I quote by Jacques Locke. He says, "In order to obtain the material, potted rose bushes are brought into a room and placed in front of a closed window. If the plants are allowed to dry out, the aphids, or parasites, previously wingless, change to winged insects. After the metamorphosis, the animals leave the plants, fly to the window, and then creep upward on the glass." End quote. So what he just told us right now, that these insects, they found that this plant, they were feeding off this plant, okay, and this plant ended up dying. These insects, parasites, found that they could no longer sustain their living. Their source of life disappeared. Their source of life was no longer there. So what they had to do was transform. They had to evolve in order for them to continue to live. And it showed through the experiment, which is exactly what they did, right? They didn't have wings before, but they grew wings, and they grew wings in order to continue living, because the plant that sustained their life was no longer sustaining their life. Well, how ironic, how interesting. For whatever reason, that kind of suits and fits what I'm going through and experiencing with where I'm at now. Because I did tell that lady, that real estate agent, that I told her I'm starting to feel that Walmart is sucking the life out of me, that it's just draining my spirit, right? I'm not excited to be there anymore. I'm not excited with the work that I have to do. It's just mundane and tedious and boring. Like today was just absolutely boring, and all I thought about was, I can't wait to go to this meeting. I can't wait to do something else. And that's not a place you need to be in, right? You need to be excited about what it is that you're doing, especially if it's filling up 8 hours of your day, 5 days out of the week, right? You need to be excited to go back into work. And I'm going to find that excitement before I pick up the responsibilities or feel like I'm positioned in a place where I can't go anywhere. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. It is evident that these tiny insects found that the plants on which they had been thriving were dead, and that they could therefore secure nothing more to eat and drink from this source. The only method by which they could save themselves from starvation was to grow temporary wings and fly, which they did. Experiments such as these indicate that omniscience as well as omnipotence is omnipresent, and that the tiniest living thing can take advantage of it in an emergency. So what he says here too, because this infinite power, this infinite creative conscious substance, which we know as the infinite mind, the universal mind, the quantum field, the source, God, whatever you want to call it, the power which is the fundamental basis of all matter and all created things, is it being all powerful, it being all wisdom, it being all substance, it being everywhere, all at once, all at the same time. This power is not only inside of us, but is inside every living thing that is in existence as well, such as these parasites. And in the case of an emergency, this power rose to give more life, to save the parasites, to allow the parasites to continue to live. And this power, if it's doing this for these insects to help them survive in cases of emergencies, it's doing the exact same for us, and it'll be available for us to use in cases of emergencies. So Hanel continues by saying, Part 15 will tell you more about the law under which we live. It will explain that these laws operate to our advantage, that all conditions and experiences that come to us are for our benefit, that we gain strength in proportion to the effort expended, and that our happiness is best attained through a conscious cooperation with natural laws. So as seen in the introduction, let's go ahead and get started with Part 15. So the laws under which we live are designed solely for our advantage. These laws are immutable, and we cannot escape from their operation. All the great eternal forces act in solemn silence, but it is in our power to place ourselves in harmony with them, and thus express a life of comparative peace and happiness. So these universal laws, these principles, this foundation, this wisdom of which our entire system rests, it is immutable, it is never changing, it never changes. And we know, even through the book of life, the Bible, it talks about how God is, always was, and always will be. God is the same today as he was yesterday, and he will be the same tomorrow as he is today, that God never changes. And that stability, the stability of law, the stability that God is the same, it's fixed. He is fixed at all times. It's our stability as well. It's our opportunity to live our lives stable in wisdom, in power, Because, as we know, by the creative power of our thought, we will be attaching our mind, our character, our being through the creative power of thought into unity, into connection with this infinite, eternal mind. Remember, because it's based on consciousness. If we want to develop wealth, we have to develop the wealth consciousness, which simply means the thinking necessary to achieve and create that wealth. It's the same with health. If you want health, you have to develop the health consciousness, which is thinking along the lines of what brings health into our lives. Right? These are foundations. These are principles. There's a certain thought process necessary to bring the things necessary to you for their achievement, because they're based in law. Right? There is always a principle behind that which we desire to create in our lives. And by the creative power of thought in our mental attitude, we could change our mind and bring our thinking into unity with these universal principles. So difficulties, inharmonies, and obstacles indicate that we are either refusing to give out what we no longer need, or refusing to accept what we require. Growth is attained through an exchange of the old for the new, of the good for the better. It is a conditional or reciprocal action, for each of us is a complete thought entity, and this completeness makes it possible for us to receive only as we give. Now, it is very interesting that he's saying that, because I literally said at work that I'm growing past this place. I feel like I'm growing beyond this place. Now, we know growth being a natural law of the universe. We continue to grow, and once we grow beyond that which no longer serves us, we have to move on to the next phase, the next thing. So we ourselves could continue to grow and continue to evolve in our own life. So ultimately, for my personal experience, the difficulty that I am now experiencing at work, the inharmony I feel I'm experiencing at work, the boredness, this obstacle that I, for whatever reason, now seem to be going through, is because there's an indication that I am growing. And he says here, we are either refusing to give out what we no longer need, or refusing to accept what we require. So this opportunity, for example, came to me because there is a new requirement for my growth that Walmart is no longer giving. And my growth will be stagnated as long as I refuse to give it up. Obviously, this doesn't mean that I'm just going to let it go like that. There's a transition period, specifically because finances are involved. I have to be smart about how I transition to another phase in my life. Our growth is attained through an exchange of the old for the new, of the good for the better. Now, I did talk with a colleague of mine. He was telling me about a man he knows that's getting into real estate himself. And he was telling me this man is getting paid $50 an hour. Now, he is giving up his $50 an hour position to get into real estate himself, because he sees a valuable opportunity in there for him. Now, obviously, the money he's making is more than enough, but he wants more, possibly more of his time. Right? He wants more time for him to do the things which he wants to do, as do I. I want the time to be able to have a family because I want a family. I want a life. And the only way I could have my life is to have money. That's the only way. In a world like this, in a capitalistic society, that's the only way to still have choices, right? Freedom of choice, freedom of time. The only way to get that is money. The only way to get that money, we know, is to be of service. And obviously, the amount of money we make is dependent upon the value of the service we provide. It is a condition. It is a conditional or reciprocal action. Remember, we're still talking about growth. Okay, for each of us is a complete thought entity, and this completeness makes it possible for us to receive only as we give. So he's telling us as conscious beings, as mental beings, okay, we are a complete thought entity, that we are a totality of the ideas of which we have, not just about ourselves, but about the things that we deal with. And as we continue to grow in thought, this growth in thought invariably and inevitably brings growth in the material, our material experiences, and growth into the opportunities of which we attract. Because we have to keep growing mentally, physically, and spiritually. We cannot obtain what we lack if we tenaciously cling to what we have. We are able to consciously control our conditions as we come to sense the purpose of what we attract and are able to extract from each experience, only what we require. Let me read that part again. It says, and we are able to extract from each experience only what we require for our further growth. Our ability to do this determines the degree of harmony or happiness we attain. So he's saying ultimately our degree of harmony and happiness is dependent upon our ability to let go of things that no longer serve us and to move towards the things that'll help us grow, that'll make us become more, be better. Now, obviously, again, this goes back to an individual's personal values, because some people value growth more than others. Some people don't care about growing anymore. They're satisfied with where they are. But we know the new thought ideal itself is all dependent upon continuous growth, continuous advancement, because a man, a woman, needs to progress in their lives in order to maintain full fulfillment. You need to, because if you don't progress, you begin to stagnate. You're no longer growing. You're no longer progressing. And that brings a lot of unhappiness. And I believe that's also what I'm feeling right now, too, with Walmart, because I don't feel like I'm progressing anymore. And that's not a great place to be. And I've been realizing the amount of progress that I have made these last several months is because I was fighting for that progress. There are people who are chosen and they're just naturally invested in by those from a higher position. And there were those like me that wanted it and decided to go after it and to fight for the investment. That's a realization that I've been having. And it's like, especially when I sat down with these agents and learning more about the real estate opportunity, it just hit me like a brick. Like, what the heck am I doing? Like, what am I fighting for here? When I could take all that I'm fighting for and the amount of energy and put it into something that will legitimately reward me. They'll reward me for doing better. And for fighting for it, I'll be rewarded tremendously. So the ability to appropriate what we require for our growth continually increases as we reach higher planes and broader visions. And the greater our abilities to know what we require, the more certain we shall be to discern its presence, to attract it, and to absorb it. Nothing may reach us except what is necessary for our growth. So ultimately, he is telling us right there, the more we grow and expand in consciousness, the more we are going to just attract opportunities that will fulfill that further growth of which we require in our lives. So ultimately, he's saying too that because I've grown so much and because where I'm at mentally, there is a greater requirement for me to do in the world than what Walmart itself has to offer. That me as a person requires more because I'm becoming more. Right? Because he's saying what we require for our growth continually increases as we reach higher planes and broader visions. And he's talking about consciousness as we continue to grow in consciousness and broaden our visions. As we do this, right, the greater our abilities to know what we require, the more certain we shall be to discern its presence, to be able to see what we have to give, what we have to offer, and to attract the opportunities, the things necessary for us to give that, right, to attract it and to absorb it. Nothing may reach us except what is necessary for our growth. All conditions and experiences that come to us do so for our benefit. Difficulties and obstacles will continue to come until we absorb their wisdom and gather from them the essentials for further growth. That we reap what we sow is mathematically exact. We gain permanent strength exactly to the extent of the effort required to overcome difficulties. The inexorable requirements of growth demand that we exert the greatest degree of attraction for what is perfectly in accord with us. Our highest happiness will be best attained through an understanding of and conscious cooperation with natural laws. In order to possess vitality, thought must be impregnated with love. Love is a product of the emotions. It is therefore essential for the emotions that the emotions be controlled and guided by the intellect and reason. It is love which imparts vitality to thought and thus enables it to germinate. The law of attraction, or the law of love, for they are one and the same, will bring to it the necessary material for its growth and maturity. The first form which thought will find is language or words. This determines the importance of words. They are the first manifestations of thought, the vessels in which thought is carried. They take hold of the ether, and by setting it in motion reproduce the thought to others in the form of sound. Now I can see how that's it's definitely one of the first avenues of which thought takes form. But as we know, thought will produce action, it produces behavior, it produces movement. We know 95% of communication is nonverbal communication, right? Because our body speaks, our body takes form in accordance to what we are thinking. Everything about our behavior is an exact manifestation of our thought process. So the first form, I don't know if I could agree with Hanel when he says that thought will take is in language or words. Because I could choose to think and not say anything at all, but my body is still representing that which my thoughts, or the nature of my thoughts, or where I am in my thinking or in consciousness. So I do agree that words are definitely an expression of thought, but I don't know if I agree whether they are the first form of thought. Now, thought may lead to action of any kind, but whatever the action, it is simply the thought attempting to express itself in visible form. It is evident, therefore, that if we wish desirable conditions, we can afford to entertain only desirable thoughts. I totally manifested real estate in this real estate opportunity that I have. We reap what we sow. I thought of it. I just so happen to be around people that are in it. I just so happen to find an office and have a conversation with the people running the office. And the conversations we had were in alignment with conversations that I've had prior with colleagues of mine. And how we were talking about leadership and mental attitude and our purpose. Not only that, these people were Christian, right? We're Christians. And they were talking about their involvement with the church and how much they tithe. I manifested that. I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I'm for whatever is happening, whatever the universal mind is doing for me in my life, I'm supposed to be there and moving towards greater opportunity, which is required for my further growth and is also necessary for me to give more to my society. It's a channel which will allow me to give more to my society, and I'll be rewarded in ways that will allow me to have the things which I want. This leads to the inevitable conclusion that if we wish to express abundance in our lives, we can afford to think abundance only. And as words are only thoughts taking form, we must be especially careful to use nothing but constructive and harmonious language, which when finally crystallized into objective forms, will prove to our advantage. We cannot escape from the pictures we incessantly photograph on the mind, and this photography of erroneous conceptions is exactly what is being done by the use of words, when we use any form of language which is not identified with our welfare. So we know affirmations are definitely auto-suggestion, right? Affirmations are a form of suggesting certain lines of thought and mental pictures upon the frame of our subconscious mind. So he's saying here, using our words, we have to use constructive words only, because these constructive words are going to get imprinted upon our subconscious mind. Remember how we learned in part 2 and how the conscious mind, he told us, is a watchman at the gate, that it is our I am, us, in our thoughts and what we accept and what we don't accept, right? We have to guard our subconscious from negative suggestions, guard our subconscious from things that will not serve us in the external world. And we have to accept that which can, that which will. And through the conscious mind, we could also direct the subconscious to move in the direction which we desire to move in. Because the language, even the language we're around, the songs we listen to, right? Songs are powerful. And the songs you listen to will have a direct effect upon both your conscious and the subconscious mind. Right? We must guard the subconscious from any form of language which is not identified with our welfare. He's saying to stay away from talk in words that will not be for your benefit. How deep does that go? How deep does suggestion go? We manifest more and more life as our thought becomes clarified and takes higher planes. This is obtained with greater facility as we use word pictures that are clearly defined and relieved of the conceptions attached to them on lower planes of thought. It is with words that we must express our thoughts, and if we are able to make use of higher forms of truth, we may use only such material as has been carefully and intelligently selected with this purpose in view. You know, let's take a step back on what he means by words, because even so, we have attached meaning to a language, and even the thoughts we think, we're creating sounds. We attached meaning to these words, so these words are what create meaning and how it affects us. It is with words that we must express our thoughts, and if we are to make use of higher forms of truth, we may use only such material as has been carefully and intelligently selected with this purpose in view. This wonderful power of clothing thoughts in the form of words is what differentiates man from the rest of the animal kingdom. By the use of the written word, he has been enabled to look back over the centuries and see the stirring scenes by which he has come into his present inheritance. Like the message of Christ, for example, or even New Thought, right? These books, this information was written over 100 years ago. Christ came over 2,000 years ago. And we know of them today because it was recorded. And we know of the power of Christ within us and the power of God that is inside through it being written. I remember how we were told we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We don't need to reinvent anything. That we just need to take what has already been found. We could put it into modern language, but ultimately it's teaching the exact same thing, because truth is truth. It has always been and always will be the same, regardless of how it's presented. And he's saying because of that, that's due to the use of words and clothing our thought with language, with meaning behind that language. He has been enabled to come into communion with the greatest writers and thinkers of all time, and the combined record which we possess today is therefore the expression of universal thought. It has been seeking to take form in the mind of man. We know that the universal thought has for its goal the creation of form. And we know that the individual thought is likewise forever attempting to express itself in form. And we know that the word is a thought form, and a sentence is a combination of thought forms. Therefore, if we wish our ideal to be beautiful or strong, we must see that the words out of which this temple will eventually be created are exact, that they are put together carefully, because accuracy in building words and sentences is the highest form of architecture and civilization, and is a passport to success. I get what he means now when he's talking about The first form which thought takes will be in language. So he's saying even the quality of our character as humans is dependent upon the words which we use, which makes a lot of sense, obviously, because we know the quality of our character is dependent upon the quality of the thoughts we think. And obviously, the thoughts we think are going to be in alignment with these word pictures, these word forms, which we ourselves use. He's saying the highest form of architecture of our entire civilization is dependent upon the words which we use as a civilization. Words are thoughts and are therefore an invisible and invincible power which will finally objectify themselves in the form they are given. Words may become mental places that will live forever, or they may become shacks which the first breeze will carry away. They may delight the eye as well as the ear. They may contain all knowledge. In them we find the history of the past as well as the hope of the future. They are living messengers from which every human and superhuman activity is born. Just like everything we're learning and obtaining about consciousness and through consciousness, and our understanding of it is dependent upon how well Mr. Hanel has put his words together and explained the principle of mind and natural law to us through this structure he has put together with his words, the words that he's using. He has systematized it to give the best value of the value he is giving us. How strange that sounds. But he is systematizing with the use of words, giving the best value through words to give the best value in the message, to give the best value of the teachings that he is giving us, so we get to have the best principles. The beauty of the word consists in the beauty of the thought. The power of the word consists in the power of the thought, and the power of the thought consists in its vitality. How shall we identify a vital thought? What are its distinguishing characteristics? It must have principle. How shall we identify principle? There is a principle of mathematics, but none of error. There is a principle of health, but none of disease. There is a principle of truth, but none of dishonesty. There is a principle of light, but none of darkness. And there is a principle of abundance, but none of poverty. Excuse me. So what he is saying, the vitality of the thought, the vitality of the principle is dependent upon the results of which it gives. Because we know darkness, we have darkness, but there's no principle in darkness itself. The principle is found in light. How shall we know that this is true? Because if we apply the principle of mathematics correctly, we shall be certain of our results. And like he told us in one of the past parts, he said if a person is not able to bring the law of attraction into operation for them, it's not due to the fact that the law doesn't work. It's due to the fact that the operator needs to have a better understanding of the law and have a better understanding to operate their own thought process. All right, and he used the example of a bridge. If a bridge collapsed, we wouldn't blame the collapse on the bridge of the bridge on gravity. We would blame the collapse on the bridge on the person that created the bridge and their lack of understanding of the laws necessary to successfully build the bridge. He's saying the same thing here. We shall know the truth by correctly applying the principle and being certain of our results. Where there is health, there will be no disease. If we know the truth, we cannot be deceived by error. If we let in light, there can be no darkness. And where there is abundance, there can be no poverty. These are self-evident facts, but the all-important truth that a thought-containing principle is vital and therefore contains life and consequently takes root, and eventually, but surely and certainly displaces the negative thoughts, which by their very nature can contain no vitality, is one which seems to have been overlooked. But this is a fact which will enable you to destroy every manner of discord, lack, and limitation. There can be no question but that he who, quote, is wise enough to understand, end quote, will readily recognize that the creative power of thought places an invincible weapon in his hands and makes him a master of destiny. In the physical world, there is a law of compensation, which is that, quote, the appearance of a given amount of energy anywhere means the disappearance of the same amount somewhere else, end quote. And so we find that we can get only what we give. If we pledge ourselves to a certain action, we must be prepared to assume the responsibility for the development of that action. The subconscious cannot reason. It takes us at our word. We have asked for something. We are now to receive it. We have made our bed. We are now to lie in it. The die has been cast. The threads will carry out the pattern we have made. For this reason, insight must be exercised so that the thought which we entertain contains no mental, moral, or physical germ which we do not wish objectified in our lives. Insight is a faculty of the mind whereby we are enabled to examine facts and conditions at long range, a kind of human telescope. It enables us to understand the difficulties as well as the possibilities in any undertaking. So ultimately, with insight, I gained insight, for example, on how my coworker is currently living. And that is not a position that I want to be in. I have the insight, the human telescope, to see beyond, to see further into how your life will be if you continue down the path of which you are going. Insight enables us to be prepared for the obstacles which we shall meet. We can therefore overcome them before they have any opportunity of causing difficulty. Insight enables us to plan to advantage and turn our thought and attention in the right direction, instead of into channels which can yield no possible return. Insight is therefore absolutely essential for the development of any great achievement, but with it we may enter, explore, and possess any mental field. Insight is a product of the world within and is developed in the silence by concentration. For your exercise this week, concentrate on insight. Take your accustomed position, focus a thought on the fact that to have a knowledge of the creative power of thought does not mean to possess the art of thinking. Let the thought dwell on the fact that knowledge does not apply itself, that our actions are not governed by knowledge, but by custom, precedent, and habit. That our behavior is created by our habits, the actions that we do, the actions we take. That the only way we can get ourselves to apply knowledge is by determined conscious effort. So obviously it's both. We know it's both. Right? We could think something and think something and think something, but we have to act upon it. We have to take action simultaneously. Call to mind the fact that knowledge unused passes from the mind, that the value of the information is in the application of the principle. Continue this line of thought until you gain sufficient insight to formulate a definite program for applying this principle to your own particular problem. So for this week, we have insight. Okay, we're going to be sitting in the silence and focusing on the power of insight to be able to get a clear vision of the future on what will come about if we apply specific actions and the end results we will get from the application of those actions. Right? What will we sow if this is what we reap? That's insight, being able to see what you will reap from what you are sowing. Now, that's the end of the part. We're going to be ending with a quote by Horatio Bonar, and I quote, "Think truly, and thy thoughts shall be, and thy thoughts shall the world's famine feed. Speak truly, and each word of thine shall be a fruitful seed. Live truly, and thy life shall be a great and noble creed." End quote. Now here's another quote at the end. This looks like it might be from Hanel himself. He says, and I quote, "To every man there openeth a way, and the high soul climbs the highway, and the low soul gropes the low. And in between, on the misty flats, the rest drift to and fro. But to every man there openeth a highway and a low, and every man decideth the way his soul shall go." End quote. Now this part, we didn't take too long on this part. This is only an hour. We're usually an hour and a half, sometimes up to 2 hours. So we have our practice for the week. Okay, we're going to be focusing on insight, developing more of what this mental faculty will be able to do for us, and our ability to discern, right, opportunities, to discern pathways, to discern how our life would look in the future if with the decisions and the path we decide to take. And as for me, we are going to have our first meeting with real estate on Monday. And we are very excited for that. Because I did walk through that door, and I did take a step already. And who knows where it's going to lead for us. It might lead us to the future, our future. We never know, right? We never know. But it's important to keep an open mind and to not shun opportunity, but to welcome it. I'll see you next week for part 16.